The paintings in this show, A Brief History in Nashville, the earlier works, I guess I started about 3 or 4 years ago, and they are more about what's happening now, what Nashville looks like in the early 21st century, especially along a very specific neighborhood, the Dickerson Pike corridor. And as I was working on the series, I came across Paul's book, Chronicles of the Cumberland. And as I was reading that, it really gave me a sense of this history of Nashville, and it was a nice segue into the work I'd been doing on this specific place. So I was able to get deeper into the content behind my work. And some of these paintings are from, I guess, the 1780s. And so the show encompasses almost a little over 200 years, I think, of work and ideas. And for me, that's really fascinating because it opens up all these new avenues of exploration as a painter. So I'm no longer moored in the 21st century. It's somehow given me a chance just to let myself loose in time almost like magic realism in a way.
My book is called Chronicles of the Cumberland Settlements, and there's an 11-year process to write it, and it basically takes accounts of people who actually experienced the frontier, or people who talked to those people and interviewed them later in their life. It's generally very close to the events that are portrayed as possible. But it's the frontier history of Middle Tennessee and the whole region, really, up until the time of Tennessee statehood in 1796. But it's pretty much symbolic of a larger cultural collision that took place all along the North American frontier, which used to be on the Atlantic coast, and it gradually moved west. And it tells that story in excruciating detail. And so someone who wants to know what it was like when people, when white, European descendants first came here with their African slaves, and want to know what that experience was like without being diluted by having it being dumbed down, this book will put you right there. Even if you're a PhD, a history professor of that area, you won't know a lot of the stuff that's in there, because a lot of stuff just was waiting to be found, and I came along, and like I say, blind pigs find an acorn. I was the blind pig, and the acorn is the stuff that the PhDs don't know anything about yet. So I'm really happy to have had the opportunity to have given a voice at that time.
I came across your book, Chronicles of the Cumberland, last year, and the history in there really started to make me think about the local narrative a little bit more. I felt my past work was a little more trivial, and as I started to read your book, it enabled me to get into the history of this place, Nashville, and then I was able to start going back and forth in time. So it started to create this sustained narrative that led me into some of these images from the show, A Brief History of Nashville. Your book, when I was reading it, it really helped me to think about a painting, because so many of your interviews were done from letters, and you took that information and ran with that in your book. So as I was thinking about the purpose of a painting, I know it exists in a specific time, but there's a conceit too that a painting will last for a couple hundred years. So it's also like a letter. In some of the more contemporary based paintings from the show, there's a sense of what it looks like to live in my specific neighborhood in the early 21st century, the colors, the textures. And I know there's video, there's photography that captures this as well, but something about a painting can really capture more the poetry of a place and the light and really intangible things like that. So I think that reading your book helped me to bring that forward into my paintings more, really started to think about the life of a painting. And I guess as far as what I got from your book, there were so many stories that I felt influenced me. And the few pieces I picked out, like the one about Anthony Bledsoe getting shot, that just really stuck with me for some reason. And the idea of the yellow caul fat being shot through its back, that was just such a vibrant, stark image. And I can only imagine how horrible that must have been. So for some reason, that stuck with me. For me, I'm an abstract painter. So reading these really visual, vivid, realistic depictions, I really struggled a little bit because, I didn't want to do a realistic narrative because it would still be just as artificial. I didn't know what the people dressed like during that time. I don't have those rendering skills. So just taking that abstract narrative from that, I was able to make some really compelling images to work with. It really kept me interested. I couldn't wait to finish these. At first I would struggle, and then I would keep working, keep drawing, and then pull those images onto the canvas, all the meanwhile, thinking about your original letters and interviews in your book.
Having come across the inspiration you found in the book, it made me sort of try to come up with analogies to say, well, that's why I thought, well, this book does have a lot of artistic analogies. One's a mosaic, where you take these pieces and you put them all together, and at the end of the day, here's the experience as best we can resurrect it over 2 centuries later. But so there's certainly an artistic quality to it. It looks, a couple people who you secretly might want to strangle, say, oh, it's a reference book. It's like, well, yeah, any good history is a reference book, but this one it's definitely not. It's a whole lot more than a reference book. But some people look at the way it's laid out and they go, oh, it doesn't look like a regular book because it's not, it's in pieces. But it's like a rock wall. You can either see a wall or you can see a bunch of stones, and this is. Basically, look at the wall. Don't look at the individual pieces. You got to look at them, but then see the whole. So that's the artistic aspect of this. But it's great to me that it came out, that communicated with you to the extent it did to make you do that.
And also, even though it's so much about local history, there's also that sense of this is a really intricate look, an intimate look at a part of American history that many people have glossed over, especially with the interactions with the Native Americans at the time. Because a lot of people, I guess, look out west to see that. We've forgotten that this was an inhabited place before we came. And also, think about the Spanish influence that happened, the French influence. It's just a larger narrative that also you're part of, because it becomes part of American history. And that, for me, that's been really important with my work, because now I'm working with real content. It's not, some esoteric artistic look at making a painting. Now it's also a part of the historical narrative that started to develop.
History tends to be, particularly local histories, tend to be dumbed down, and I just thought really the people, what they went through and how magnificent some of them were, the best of the best were just absolutely, certainly put anyone in their place if they think they're all that. If you think you're good, look at this person, this woman or this man, and what they accomplished under this incredibly difficult circumstances. And so I thought that certainly you dumb something down and you lose all that detail. How can I say it? The excellence is in the details. You can't, if you dumb it down, you just lose it, and you might as well not even bother. And
in your epilogue, I was really appreciative of that aspect of your book, because you recorded what happened to some of these people. Some of them would get dementia. They'd be in their 80s. Some people would get cancer, and those things really link us now. We don't know anything really about the arduous circumstances of their life 200 years ago, but everyone that we know, has an end-of-a-life experience like that, where there's dementia, cancer, and something like that. So that's something that really links us, and that's, I guess, really humanistic of your book. It just really shows the human nature, how even though our history's changed, we're still, still human beings. We're still working in this, same context of life that way.
The poster child for that was a guy named Edward Swanson, who came to this area as a 19-year-old with James Robertson in the spring of 1779, and he provided, later in his life, 40, 50 years later, he provided incredible amount of detail about how they got here. And there was not any record of this anywhere, and this kind of came out of it was found in his papers were found in a cupboard in West Tennessee in 1980, and had been just sitting there waiting for somebody to find it, and somebody had the good sense to take it to the State Library and Archives, and then it laid there for a while because nobody really understood exactly what it was. And then I had enough of the background to say, oh my God, this is the Rosetta Stone, this is the Dead Sea Scrolls. And when you looked at what Swanson wrote, it was just everywhere where the information was thin, he provided this rich detail. And he either kept a wonderful journal or he was a genius at recall. And of all people, he's the one who got dementia. And he became sort of a metaphor for what happens to history. It's vivid when it's unfolding, and then it's just slowly forgotten, and then it's just...
Well, that's why I think I pulled the idea of painting from your book, because a painting is a vivid memory. It's like one point in time, and like I said, keep going back, these are almost like letters to a possible future, and I think that's really interesting with what I do and also what you've done with your book.
That's where it gets into modern times, and what we're doing to the to the environment and to the landscape, and I think both the native inhabitants and the frontier settlers would both be horrified with a lot of what's happened. When you take particularly the frontiersmen, a beautifully fertile, deep soil that took millions of years to develop. Well, let's put a shopping center on top of that and sterilize the whole thing for all time, where it had been yielding crops for 200 years, and we've done it for another 1,000 if taken care of. It gets scorched, and then 10 years later, the shopping center's defunct, and they try to figure out what, this is Bellevue Center is a perfect example of that. The short-term thinking, I think both the native inhabitants and the frontiersmen are going, what in the world are you people doing? You got the population of the world skyrocketing, and you've got a limited amount of resources, and you're destroying those resources. But there's a lot of material. All this stuff pertains to everything. Everything's connected. I guess so. I'd go back to with the seeming, here's a abstract artist and a very non-abstract book coming together, but everything is connected, and the whole thing.
It's been a really nice experience working with your book and finally getting to meet you. Talked about paintings and history together.
Well, hope you keep doing it.
I do too.